and hello to everybody who's on watching us on Zoom. This is the latest in an ongoing series of discussions brought to you by NYU's SPS integrated marketing program called the Future Forward Sphere. We bring in practitioners and marketing experts to talk to us about the things that we do in real life outside of the classroom. And today, I'm lucky to have two amazing people. We're experts in content. What is content marketing? Isn't all marketing content? Yeah?
Yeah.
It is? I think it is. So what is content marketing and how is it different from other types of marketing we can talk about or learn about? We're going to dig into that in today's session. So I'm going to introduce, we have two speakers, and let's, as always, just like we do in our classrooms, this is not a lecture, this is an interactive series. So I would expect you to just jump right in with questions, with comments. Let's make this a conversation. It's a lot more fun that way. To lead us off, Paul Kaplan, author and marketer. In fact, his book is here right in front called Essentials of Thought Leadership and Content Marketing. He's going to kick this off and explain to us what is content marketing? What are its essential principles? How does it work? How do we deploy it? And joining also us, JP is a long time incredible marketer who I've seen his work throughout my career. And I think I reached out to you once just because I thought something you did was so cool. And I encourage you to do that too. If you see really great work, LinkedIn is amazing to say, like, reach out to someone and say, like, I just saw that thing you did and it is so cool.
Yes.
And he's done some amazing things. So we're gonna also show some examples. And as an added bonus, the first person who asks a really good question will get a copy of the book for free. So that's on you guys. So without further ado, Paul, take us off.
Great. Okay, well, I'm really glad to be here at NYU, SPS, and with JP and Peter. I think this will be like an enlightening hour for us here as well as on Zoom. And like Peter said, we're going to go over some foundation kinds of things and some definitions that I think are important, and some best practices. And we're going to look at a lot of examples, and some will be videos. So I think you'll find that very dynamic. Okay, so let's start off by sort of setting the table about content marketing. What do we really mean by that? So, like in this book, I got to interview a lot of different institutes that think about this, consulting companies, sort of best practice companies, like, for example, IBM that JP worked at prior. So I have some definitions here, and let's kind of like break some of this down. So Content Marketing Institute says it's a strategic marketing approach focused on creating and distributing valuable, relevant, consistent content. That's something we're going to talk about, consistency, attract and retain, talk about that, and a clearly defined audience, and ultimately to drive profitable customer action. And that's a really key point too. Like, what is all this driving towards? And so we do want to see some of that, the customer action, which we'll talk about some of the metrics. So content marketing, like at a high level, looking at some of the ways that we can be in front of the industry, that we can really have thought leadership is one part of it. So in today's talk, we're going to mention about B2B, business to business, as well as consumer. And a lot of what we say is going to be applicable not only for like if you're at a company, but also if you're at an agency, and even like if you're an entrepreneur and you have your own company and you want to do these kinds of things. So with thought leadership itself, you could think of that as a subsection of content marketing, whereas content marketing will have some solution marketing that underlies it. We'll talk about all of that in a minute. Thought leadership is a little more specific. So here's the thing about thought leadership. We have a few things here. It's ideas that require attention. It's not just kind of stating the obvious, sort of recapping what everyone knows in the industry. At its best, it is forward-looking in B2B. It's guiding. It's coming up with ideas that maybe many in the industry are struggling with, and how do they kind of work through that. And it can offer some guidance and clarity. Now, here's another thing that I want you all to remember about thought leadership. It can lead readers to unexpected or contrarian directions. thought leadership, again, is not just sort of stating what everyone agrees with. Sometimes it's taking a different point of view if that really is what the speaker thinks or the writer thinks, and bringing that to the industry, using it in conversations with clients and prospects and solutions. Another thing that we're going to be talking about, because some of this is consumer, right? Educational, and it can be provocative. It can also be fun and entertaining, and that's the key piece. And JP is going to be talking about that later, and some of the examples that we have around that. So try to make this a little more concrete. Yeah.
Just a question, can I ask a question? So kind of, thought leadership, it's interesting. In academia, we always say, thought leadership is based on kind of, whether it's data or observations, and what you just described is, also sounds like opinions, right? And can be contrarian, sometimes provocative. Just wanted to get your take on that. Like the best thought leadership, how much do you think it should be rooted in, fact-based?
That's a great question. The best thought leadership is evidence-based.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise, it's just someone kind of pontificating.
Exactly.
It should be drawn upon facts, which are excellent sourced.
Yep.
It should be drawn upon if someone does an original survey and that's an excellent source. Great. So it absolutely should be based on that. What it's not is just kind of like a random opinion. That's
Exactly. Just wanted to clarify.
How is that different from advertising? If I say 9 out of 10 dentists prefer Crest, is that not?
Well,
fact-based?
I think it is all those things. I think the big differentiation from my perspective around how thought leadership is different from a lot of the other things that happen in marketing, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, is that thought leadership inherently is dense, right? Like thought leadership historically is a research paper. It's like
Exactly.
like survey oriented. It's not something that you could put on a banner ad, right? Like it's something that you really need to dig into. And for that reason, it doesn't have to be evidence-based, but it's a lot stronger when it is, because you're taking people through, like historical thought leadership is a multiple page report. Now it can be a podcast, it can be a video, but oftentimes those things are lengthier, which means you have to engage the audience throughout. And if you're just stating opinions over and over, people start to see through it, right? Like, so you do need to have that evidence-based material that you can talk to and dig into. I'll talk about a report that the company that I work at just released that is evidence of that.
So the difference is that there's a framework behind it that you're really advancing to the client. The example that Peter gave about 9 out of 10 dentists recommend, that might be correct, might be based on good source. But ultimately it's just an ad, it's just a message. What's really behind it? What was in that study? Does that mean dentists are wrong in kind of thinking about it? All of that, we could kind of more draw about leadership. So some ways to think about it: surveys, blogs, but often based usually on fact or hard experience. Infographics, would be another example. And videos that are based on that. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. So just some examples, like one example would be like wealth managers engaging with affluent Gen Y and Gen Z at scale. And a lot of these wealth managers, how are they going to deal with younger generations as they age and start to have more wealth? How can they do that at scale? How can they balance their profitability? But your thought leadership might not be about that. You might say it's not that important, and actually they're more interested in robo-advising. And wealth managers, you should only concentrate on these segments, and here's the technology you need to do it. Like that would be a point of view from that. Okay, so in terms of what is our process here, and we'll check in with JP on this and sort of see how he has thought about this at IBM, at PayPal, and at Lightcast. So 4-step process. You want to understand your current issues and evolving trends really well. You have to really do a lot of research here. And what are the pressing concerns for your stakeholders? And so there's a lot of sources for this, like whether it's your sales team, whether it's influencers, social media, and you want to create a roadmap of how you think industry players should react. So that's really important. Like, how is that going to work? What is your real point of view? What are the different pieces coming out of that? Now, these two I put in red. Why? Because this is where I think a lot of companies tend to fall down. Okay, so I wanted to emphasize these. Number 3, showing how prospects and clients can solve for these through your solutions. Now, when I interviewed a lot of folks, like for this book, right, they all said this. They said, this is more B2B, okay, let's just say. But they said, you can't just tell the industry that there's a problem and then never have a solution for them. of course you have a solution. And obviously as a business, that's what we want to sell, right? I mean, that is part of all this, of course. But even to the thought leadership, so they gave you an example of, would you talk about winter and how cold it's gonna get? And how, you can get sick if you go outside with, not dressed appropriately, and that's it? No, you have to tell them about the scarf and the glove. This was an actual example, someone in a consulting firm cited. So talking about the solutions underneath it is another part of content marketing. It's not about leadership, you don't wanna be too salesy. But looking at your overall strategy, your company should have some kind of solution around it. I would say in B2B, because otherwise you're more offering something that you don't have like really as a solution. And then the other thing I wanted to say, and a lot of companies, agencies, own businesses fall down on number 4. So I really want to emphasize this, and it'll be interesting to see what JP how he's dealt with this. Creating an ecosystem for consistent content. Remember I said that before about consistency? This is where a lot of companies fall down. They do that one great survey, and it's out there, and yes, they do some marketing for it. They do kind of what we're talking about. And they do some metrics around it, which we'll get to later. But then it kind of falls off, and they don't really have an ecosystem to develop more content and develop content from that, and it kind of falls. A lot of companies fall into that trap, not an IBM, because it has a superb ecosystem. So I say smaller companies maybe, or even larger, that just, what happens, their budgets get cut, it's deprioritized, it's these kinds of things. So you wanna, with thought leadership is consistency. Just going to the marketplace like as a one-off is definitely not what we're going to talk about.
One of the really, really interesting things about this consistency factor is that, especially in B2B, right, the sales cycle is often 12 to 24 months. That means that unlike buying a book or a Starbucks coffee, it's not like I can tell you one thing and you're gonna make a purchasing decision. So through research, we figured out that often the buying group, like that's the other thing, it's not just one person buying it, right? It's a group. Or like somebody who sees it is not necessarily the one that's holding the purse strings. So then that person needs to convince another person, needs to convince a VP, and then the VP needs to convince the SVP. So it's a lot of people making a decision across multiple touch points. So that means that you have to have thought about this from the beginning. If all you have to deliver them is one thing, they're not going to continue to deliver that one thing all across the organization. You need to think about each of the personas and what is interesting to them and what is impactful to their business and in their department, so that they can go to their boss and be like, we should make this decision to buy this product or this service or this offering because it's important to me and this is how it's important to me, which may be different from how it's important to Peter.
And to have the ecosystem hoops in place so that, it's, okay, so that you can actually get this done. There's a whole operational piece that we'll talk about later. Okay, so topic selection, I'll go through some of these fairly quickly and then we'll go to some examples and go to JP. So I thought this was a really interesting model that when I interviewed folks, I sort of demarcated this. So the first best thought leadership topics are think about these 3 areas. What is the company's sweet spot? What do they do really well? That's number 1. Number 2, what is the market white space? What is the market not talking about that maybe they should be? Now, of course, it's AI and there's 20 million things around that. But there's always something that, what's the angle? It's not just AI, everyone knows that, but what specifically is the industry not talking about that much that you can comment on, that your company, rightly so, has some expertise around that? And then the third is, what is your client's hot button? And that you would know either by speaking to your clients or by speaking to your client-facing teams and getting their feedback. And they'll be able to tell you that. Like, what are they really struggling with? And frankly, what's the opportunity for your company? I mean, it should be somewhat like that. So looking at where the intersect.
Yeah, and for the students here who are in the sort of the campaign 1 class, this might look kind of familiar when we did the 4C analysis of O'Brien's finance positioning. It's sort of very similar, except they were talking about, culture instead of market white space. We were talking about same thing, company, right? Customer. So you'll see the same thing. We're always looking for that intersection of what you do well, what people care about, what other people aren't talking about right now.
Oftentimes, when you see a construct like this, at least my first question is always, which of these 3 circles is the most difficult to figure out? And in my experience, they're all difficult to figure out, depending on what company you're at. Right, like at IBM, because IBM is 120 years old, they knew what the company's sweet spot was, right? Like, and the clients had been with them for a really long time, so they knew what their clients' hot buttons were. But we weren't so great at listening, right? Like, we had been pontificating what IBM means to the world for so long that we started to like drink our own Kool-Aid. And so we forgot to like do active listening, which, you know, was on Paul's previous slide as number one. Like, make sure that you're paying attention to what's happening out there in the marketplace so that you don't get passed over.
And you'll find too, like, the market white space, very hard to find in areas where everybody is in the market. So like AI right now, it's very hard to find an angle that's not being actively spoken about.
Yes.
Funny.
So a question for JP and for Peter. So, hi Jane, welcome. So how do you handle that? Let's say but let's say for argument's sake, you do want to be in a certain white space, then there is opportunity. And your company really does have something to say, so you've met the other criteria, but yeah, there is a ton of stuff. How did you handle this at IBM or at Lightcast? Like, how do you find that right angle? What would you advise?
Yeah, it's the first step is always to really interrogate the question, right? Because sometimes people say, oh, everything has been said about this topic. Has it really? Like, everything has been said about it? Like, there's no way that every single angle has been taken. And so sometimes the first step is just to like go and brainstorm in a room with a bunch of people who have varied perspectives and see if, as you continue to poke at it, if you can't get to something that is unique. So in a report that we just did at Lightcast, we honed in on something that's happening here in the United States that has been talked about in pockets, but no one had really grouped it all together. And the fact is that we're in some significant trouble very soon, because there are a lot of older people, they're called baby boomers, the baby boomer generation, who are in retirement age now. They're leaving the workplace. And those people don't have as many people in the generations beneath them to take the jobs that they're leaving. So people talked about, oh, are we in a recession? Or like, why are there no servers at restaurants anymore? And so we just interrogated, like, oh, here is the reason why. And so a few weeks ago, we went to market with this new epiphany about what the white space really is. It's not that kids don't want to like serve food to people anymore. It's like, wait a second, there used to be a whole bunch of people who are exiting and we don't have enough people to take their place. And that got picked up in the New York Times, Forbes, Axios, the Wall Street Journal. Like, it was a question that other people had asked and answered, but they sort of only answered it partially. And we tried to answer it more fully.
I think that's a great example. That's exactly what we're talking about leadership. You see how JP really turned it around, and he found in this white space and non-conventional wisdom and looked at the actual stats that he has and labor stats and showed subsequent generations.
I mean, an example of this in our current lives, actually, I think, right, which is marketing campaign.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Product with people. And what are they talking about? The same, for as long as there's been politics, people are gonna be talking about the economy, right, or one or two other topics that people care about. And how the politician finds an angle into the story that resonates with people is the market white space that some people are very effective at doing, right, we've seen. And we talk about this, and interesting consumer products is the same thing. When you have a CPG category where every product is generally the same, like toothpaste, they all do the same thing for you. Finding that white space to talk about as the job of marketing, right? It is about interrogating the question, often qualitative, focus groups to try to find out what is some aspect of this product that no one's talking about, that is worth making a remark about, right? It does get difficult though, because you run the risk of becoming frivolous, right?
Yes.
Because obviously everybody's talking about the important thing. And as you dig and you become the risk of talking about the ancillary topic.
Yeah, right, exactly. And one thing we'll talk about is sort of media attention and getting industry like JP was able to get versus like your company and what you're trying to accomplish. And the two don't always go hand in hand. And we'll talk about some of those challenges. So in terms of identifying content topics, you know a lot of these, we've got a million here, but just we mentioned about the account feedback, a lot of research reports, the influencer blogs and groups. conferences, trade periodicals. These are just some to really try to identify that white space and what your sort of angle will be. So here on this slide, look, this is where we want to look at the kind of inverse relationship of volume and impact. So let me explain. What this slide looks at is what is major impact in industry? What is the media going to pick up on? I mean, when we say media, just to be clear, it could be mainstream or trade, but we are talking about earned media, not just paid media. And what will kind of make a splash in the industry versus, what's really more, what will the company put a lot out of, which isn't a bad thing, but often the two are inverse. So we see that the thought leadership at its best, okay, can have a major impact, but there can, in terms of volume, there just is a lot less of that. There's a lot less case studies. It's very, very hard to get lean case studies. The product, service, and offering, usually companies have more of that. And then the bottom one, they usually have a lot of brand advertising and messaging. So there's the most content, but like those that we interviewed, noted that would have the least impact on the trade media, right? They're not going to be as interested, just what your company can offer. But that doesn't mean that's not important for your clients and your prospects and your sales. So think of it in like different. You have to balance both the needs of your company or your own company, if you're an entrepreneur, versus the industry splash. And sometimes you want to, kind of do both or either. Any comments on that, JP?
Actually, could I ask you a favor?
Sure.
Could you advance to the slide where I talk about the hero derivative structure? I think that could be meaningful to talk about. Here. Here we go. Okay, so what we just described with this inverse relationship in the pyramid about thought leadership being, smaller, right? It's the tip, right? And it's also important to understand that when you're developing thought leadership, because you're going to put a lot of time and effort and energy and resources to it, like it can't be that you're doing a lot of it, right? You have to be, it's called thought leadership. You got to be really thoughtful about it, right? Like, and so as a brand, as a company, you want to think, what are the areas that are most important to us? That's where you spend the time doing the thought leadership. That is what I call the hero, right? So the report that I just talked about with regards to the people getting older and no more jobs, right? Like we call that the rising storm. It was a 68-page report, right? Like PDF and digital resource. But it doesn't just stop there. We don't just continue to talk about the 68-page report. There are a lot of people who are never going to read a 68-page report. I probably wouldn't have read the 68-page report if I didn't work at the company. Right? Like, so how do you manifest it in a bunch of other ways down that pyramid, like to show like, well, this is not just one thought leadership piece. This is a bunch of other things, depending on how I pitch it to you and where I pitch it to you. So the hero is the research report. The derivative assets are things like I converted it into an audiobook, bar parts on Spotify. So you don't have to read 68 pages. You can listen while you run, right? Like we made a blog entry just about one aspect, right? Like the older and younger generation, how they look at work differently. That's like 6 pages of the report, but we pulled it out for a blog entry, right? Like we did a full webinar where we engaged a thought leader about what this topic looks like. And then we did, to date, 51 different social posts about this one report, right? So hero derivative model, start at thought leadership, go all the way down into all the different aspects of marketing that allow for all of your different constituents, all of your different audiences to come in a different doorway to get to the place that you want them to.
And in B2C, the model is the same. So good examples is in Chipotle. Pull one up. Had a piece of hero content they do maybe every year or two. They did a film with what is it, Fiona Apple being wonderful animation with the right, and their whole point was about where food comes from farming. The hero piece was designed to elicit the attention. It's that controversial piece of filmmaking that gets spread around. But what came from that was a game that they made. There were a couple of articles that they helped publish about industrial farming. There was that they posted like a fresh food like event or something like that. So like like it's that pyramid.
Yes, and all the way down to in the stores. I remember like not right after the video debuted, but a few months later, then you start to see in-store signage about, hey, Chipotle makes everything fresh, and then they're directly from, I live in New Jersey, right, like, they're just right down the block, we're sourcing our lettuce from the farmer's market, you know, like, and so it's about pulling the thought leadership all the way through the funnel.
Okay, we talked about that. And then in terms of like defining your audience, so I'm sure a lot of you have thought about this and your different personas, but it really is important to think about the thought leadership that way. If you can divide your audience into different segments according to their needs and interests. So like, for example, if you're a chief technology officer at a manufacturing company looking to upgrade the IT infrastructure, or are you the purchasing executive, or are you the end user? And they might have different needs. It may be called for to segment your thought leadership in terms of your channels, but also in terms of the content itself. You have to decide, like, how much do you want to do that? At IBM, how did you handle sort of the end user versus the purchasers of your clients versus like the real technology folks?
Yeah.
Did you tend to make different things?
We did. We made different things because again, this like buyers group is dynamic, and it's not only dynamic through level, like sometimes you're talking to the manager, has to then pitch to the director, has to pitch to the vice president, but also you're pitching across multiple departments. Some of those departments are very technical. So I'm actually gonna talk about something I'm doing right now at Lightcast, which is, so we are a labor market data company. That's why we created a report about like, what does the job market look like and like, how are people doing? What we found is that the folks who buy our data and buy our software and like access our APIs are the data wonks. They're the people who like know Python and C++. I don't know what either of those two things are or how to log into them. Like, but we know that adjacent to those people are maybe like somebody here at NYU that would buy our data and like is thinking about, what does the like school of professional studies want to be in 5 years? Which means, what should we be training our teachers to teach our students? What are the jobs that are going to be manifesting themselves 5 years from now? That's very different from the person accessing the data in Python, right? Like, so you must understand that there are two distinct audiences, and when you're talking to the young woman who is doing the Python stuff, you want to talk about the data and the infrastructure and the veracity of the data and how much, you know, like we process and unsuppress government data in order to get her what she needs. And then to the other person in the other department, we need to talk about, you know, you can use Lightcast data to make strategic decisions for your institution. Let me tell you about how we did it for SUNY Purchase and Harvard and whatever else. Completely different people with a different way in. And you have to understand both of them and create content marketing that is focused on either of them and both of them.
Right, exactly. Okay, so just quick, like in terms of the buyer's journey, so you can think of it in terms of like the who, the how, and the what. So starting from the bottom, like the blogs, infographics, market data, we talked about some of this and the introducing users to the industry issues. Then here's the thing, and by the way, this next one is actually very popular. I found this gets great response. More of the how. How do you actually do it? A lot of clients actually, because a lot of times they kind of do. And then the who, so yeah, I grant you, it's not about leadership as much. I am getting a little bit more into the sales, but this is about like case studies, why us, basically. And so we speak now, this isn't really for the media. This is for me trying to expand my opportunities with my clients. So I do want to have product demos, sales collateral. I want to explain why our company is right for that. So that would be like really when it kind of gets to that point.
Yeah, so the point that this is, so now we're getting into the creative portion of the program, which is like, all right, you have the story to tell. How do you tell it? And a great piece of advice is show, don't tell, right? And the easiest thing to do for any company in consumer or B2B is just like write up a paper on what we believe and put it out there and hope that you consume it. But as we see in all of our marketing classes, it's about persuasion, it's about communicating to people in a way that they're likely to understand. So have anybody seen this video here? No, okay, I'll play just a bit of it. Anybody here read an article on generative AI in the last, right? It's on online, right? Generative AI, how does it work? What does it do? Does anybody here kind of really fully understand what generative AI can do? All right, let's see how Reid Hoffman explained it.
Why would I want to be interviewed by a digital version of myself? Well, great question. Reid AI, introduce yourself to everyone. Hello everyone, I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm an AI-generated version of Reid Hoffman, his digital twin. My thinking and everything I am saying comes from a custom GPT that is based on 20 years of Reid talking and making content. So I've read all his books, watched his speeches, and listened to his podcasts. I think it gives me a pretty good sense of how you approach the world, Reid. So first, I'm going to challenge Reid AI with some questions to see what it can do and how good its content is in mirroring what I might say. Then the tables will turn and I will challenge you with some questions about AI and tech. Of course, there's a second question, whether or not I'll answer. Well, okay, challenge accepted. Let's get started. Let's take a real piece of work from me, blitzscaling. I wrote a 336-page book, and how do you explain it in one sentence? To a smart person, to a 5-year-old, well, for the Star Trek fans, in Klingon.
Right, so as people start sharing this and saying, oh my God, now I get it. I get what you can do with this. You can train it and recreate things. And the digital twin does a really good job answering questions and understanding him. And since other people have like followed suit, right? So IBM's a lot of good examples of like making things that show in compelling ways the content.
Yeah. Do you mind fast forwarding a couple of slides to the code and response? Of course.
Before you
Yeah.
continue,
Sure.
if you go back to the buyer journey,
Yes.
if you could go back to the buyer journey, you know, where you showed the what, the how, if you do mind pulling that one up. I'm just curious because it kind of also dawned on me with the Reid Hoffman video. You know, whenever I talk in my class about content marketing and storytelling, I say, you know, your first question is the why around kind of like the higher purpose of your being and kind of
Model.
yeah, kind of based on that. And so where does I know it probably fits into the you know, the what, but I'm very curious why you guys didn't hone in on that why aspect, because I always feel that's the starting point for any story or content.
Oh, yeah, the why is, the what can be framed in the why. I'd
Right,
say.
that's
Like,
where that belongs, I
that's where-
think, yeah,
right.
okay, got
Yeah.
it. That's
The
where-
why is sort of like the catalyst for it, you might say. So this is why it's important for reasons A, B, and C. This is why it matters to you. And I'm going to now walk you through this issue in various ways. Yeah.
As Chris, back to the other side, I'll say that not to kill you with constructs, but at IBM, we talked about the buyer's journey in 3 steps. Care, consider, and choose. And so the first step being, get them to care about a problem. And so this is what we did here with code and response. This was like true thought leadership stuff, did not go like any further down in the buyer's journey, which was consider and then choose. So care was get people to care about something that maybe they're not so hyper-focused on. And this was an opportunity for us to put a spotlight on people who are doing dev work, coders, but a small portion of them who are actually heroes, right? They're heroes because in the midst of the California wildfires and hurricanes and earthquakes, they were using their expertise to configure code to help first responders and help emergency departments to provide assistance to those who need it. You don't think about coder, like you think about what's that show on CBS, like Fire Country, like that, like, you know, like amazingly handsome guy putting on all this gear and, you know, like shooting fire with an extinguisher. You're like, but wait a second, sometimes people behind a computer, you know, like who are coding drones to like be able to send back information to the fire department are doing as much, if not more. And so we said, okay, we know that coders are a key audience for IBM. How do we show them in a positive light? Reflect back to them that they're doing some good for the earth. And then they're gonna come to us and be like, wow, thank you so much for showing that we're not just people in hoodies playing, Doom in the basements, but we're really doing some good. And we stopped there, right? We just got them to care and about us because we were reflecting back on them, but also we got a bunch of people who probably never thought about developers in the context of this, like first responders to natural disasters. We got them to think about it in a new way. And then the consider portion is like, well, so if your company like has coders who are interested in doing something amazing and helping society, like foster that in them. And then, so you should consider doing that. And by the way, there are a couple of different organizations that help to do that. IBM has one too, right? Like, so consider us in the consideration set. And then by the way, more content underneath it. Like, if you want to join the IBM Coding Institute, come and join it. Like, we have this, all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. So this is the care portion. And then the consider and the choose portion sat underneath it for the full content marketing. Like,
And then you commissioned a documentary film,
yes, yes.
which was astounding.
So we put it on Amazon. We screened it in a couple of theaters around the country, pinpointed locations where we knew that there was a distinct audience from the Bay Area, obviously. And it was an immense success. We won us a couple of awards, but more importantly, it got a bunch of people signed up for this IBM Coding Institute that, of course, we could have taken another route. Like, I go back to my Lightcast example of a few minutes ago. We could have talked about the veracity of the code and like how many trillion gigabytes, terabytes of information we have. Instead, we're going to show you as helping people who just got hit by a dynamic like hurricane and how you are a hero.
And that's the care, right? That's basically the why, the care, right? And that's beautiful.
Okay, so this is a model just kind of put together for this to look at industry engagement. So how do you really increase your brand voice? We talked about the client. There's different ways. So the client communications, the digital advertising, social media, the buy and earn media, the sales team engagement. So that's something we haven't mentioned that much yet. And I think it is an important piece, especially for B2B. The ones who are interacting with your clients, you really do want to make sure that they're engaged with those. It could be part of their conversation that they're trying to get with that prospect. It could be great for their, prospecting and also for furthering client relationships. A lot of times you'll find the sales teams that maybe they're already in a company, but they want to penetrate other parts of the company that they're not currently in. They find this is very difficult to do. And sometimes content marketing provides that conversation in order for them to do it. So then like the demos for events, worlds, and then before we talked about like some of the ecosystem and AI also can help with the ecosystem as well. In terms of like the media model, JP, would you want to kind of walk through this slide,
Sure.
maybe in reference to some of your work at PayPal and IBM?
Of course. Before I start, show of hands, who in the room is familiar with this construct of like paid owned? Okay, so let's say about half of the group. So I'll spend 30 seconds like doing the broad overview. So when you're thinking about media and how you're presenting it in the marketplace, there are sort of three ways that you can, right? You own a bunch of stuff. You own a website, you own social media properties, maybe you own a store. You can use all of those things to just push out your own message. Earn is getting other people to say your message for you, oftentimes without paying, right? So like think of influencers. I don't know, I'm on TikTok and I'm a Costco shopper, right? Like, and so on my TikTok all the time, it's like this week's top 5 Costco buys. Costco didn't pay that person to do that. That's just somebody who gave them earned media. They know that content generates views. And so they're like, I'm gonna go to Costco every week, but like Costco benefits. So that's earned media for Costco. And then of course there's paid, where you buy an ad. So it's interesting as you're thinking through your content marketing, you gotta think about this mix, right? Like, what you're gonna put where, right? Like, and definitely content marketing is hyper focused on this, right? Like I just described with this TikTok example, you want people to be generating media for you. And the more provocative you are, the better you are at finding a white space, the more people are intrigued. And then they start to build content for you. Like that is the pantheon of content marketing. If you can get others to do your job for you, great. The other thing that sits within earned media, besides just like shares and posts and reviews, is traditional media attention. And that is increasingly difficult to get, because there are so many media outlets, but to get people who have a built-in audience to say your name, talk about your products, talk about your company is gold. And so for years and years and years, since the first podcast was ever generated that got any type of business traction, the company that I was at, some executive picked up the phone or sent me a Slack and was like, hey, we should start a podcast. And my answer every single time is absolutely not, right? Because you're starting from zero. Why don't you just go to somebody who has a podcast and try to pitch your people as experts to be their guests? Because they've got millions of subscribers, they've got millions of views. Generate the earned media instead of going and trying to build from zero.
Hi, I do PR and we talk about pay so long. So paid, earned, share,
Yes.
because, for example, like you said, X content, any kind of media content, a podcast, I feel like now we consider it shared.
Yeah,
So I guess was it a choice to not include that in this situation?
that shared model is definitely, it is increasingly a PR construct. We work with an agency and they use that model as well. I think this is also, I suspected that some of you would have never seen this at all before. So I was like, well, I'll go with the easiest version that I've got. But yeah, the shared portion, in my opinion, is a subset under. Right? It's what is it that you're doing to generate that attention that someone else is providing to you? And the easiest version, right? I think of it from a social perspective, is click the share button. And now I've got your entire audience to see what I was, putting out on my own channels. So I don't know, it's a derivation, I think.
I agree with that.
And also just with the medium, we'll have a slide on this, but there is a lot to be said though still for trying to pitch you're from PR, right? And get if your article is accepted, where a reporter wants to write an article or quote it, especially if it's paid media that's read. I mean, there's a certain level of prestige to that, and also that it's higher barriers to entry because they want to make sure that the article's good and that they're not going to just take anything. So that's the hardest one to get is the earned media. It's difficult. But if it goes back to that angle, have that unique angle, like JP's example before about the younger generation and all of that, and it's sort of timely, the media will kind of pick that up. But there's a whole art to it, which sounds like some of what you do, in terms of the pitching to the media and really having story to the media angle. Another thing with media is they, rightly so, usually want something that's more well-rounded. So a lot of times, if you put out something that's very raw, say digital transformation, this is why you should do it for reasons ABC. The media outlet might say, well, wait a minute. For our readers, we want to make sure this is a holistic account. So what are some of the risks? What are some of the costs? I didn't see that in the article. And so, for example, at work, at Wipro, we recently had some interest from an insurance journal, for example. They said we're interested in publishing your thought leadership, but not as this. You need to make it more well-rounded. You need to go back. You need to answer some of these other questions. So there is sort of that thoroughness too, which I really like with it. Okay, so this is. Do you want to, JP, talk about provoking an audience?
Sure. Yeah, we've touched on it a couple of times in our 45 minutes together so far, and the media cares about well-roundedness and thoughtfulness. So I don't know. Arguably, you could say recently maybe they don't hold themselves to the same standard that they used to. But The other thing that's really important is that angle that we just discussed, right? Like, and oftentimes you need to do something that is contrary, right? You need to do something that is just a little bit different, or maybe wildly different from what else is out there. And so think about a health and beauty company that says, you're gorgeous exactly the way you are. Don't bother buying any of our stuff. Yeah.
You'll look younger, smaller, lighter, fuller, tighter, thinner, softer. It really works.
That's, they produced, and less controversial, so that's why we chose that. They won a con lot and lion last year for one on eating disorders. Which was a documentary footage that they captured from girls, teenage girl's mobile phone, of her journey from sweet kid to like obsessed with their looks, and it's partnership. And you know, ostensibly the reason that they produce these films is to garner start a conversation. It's really the catalyst for a conversation. It generates tons of PR, both pro and against. In fact, the example of that we were talking about, the Chipotle one that they did at farming, generated a lot of negative publicity. A lot of press, like the Wall Street Journal and others came out and said they're full of shit.
Yeah.
They're one of the largest producers of food waste and all the rest, and for a lot of thought leadership, that's fine, because you want it to be the center of a conversation that's happening. You can't control it when you do it advertising. That's right, but
And increasingly, as companies think about creating and deploying thought leadership and content marketing in general, you also really have to think about their spokespeople, because there may be some backlash. Nowadays, the media is social, right? Like, and so people are going to banter back, and you need to have somebody in your organization who can engage in those conversations, deliver the talking points that you want, but also have real like interactions with real humans about what this means. And I'm sure that Doug has a whole team of people who they have briefed, and it's like, all right, when you get questions, we want to talk about this. The fact is that often thought leadership is meant to provoke this conversation, which means you have to be willing to engage in the conversation, even if it's difficult.
And so remember, it could be standing for this, you know, the consumer will standing for something or against something. You know, what you saw was more like, it was more like the latter. I think so. It's an interesting approach. Okay, so this slide is about gaining media interest. We've referenced this several times today, but you know, just looking at the like unique insights we talked about, a lot of these quotable sound bites. How do you really configure your angle in a way that the media will consume? Relevant, timely stories can be a good way to do it too, kind of to it. So let's be clear. We've talked about like surveys and quantitative data. That could work for this, but you want to craft a story about it. You want to, if it's just dry data, the media won't be as interested. What's the so what? And what's, you know, and it's really good to think about that before you do your survey, by the way. When you're starting your survey work, you can think about what are the real takeaways that I want my audience to have, however the data goes, however the insights go. Or what are the things that I would want like a reader, a particular article in this media space to get from it. So, I'm going to things on the left, but, and then, yeah, so JP, do you want to talk about gating media interest in Lightcast?
Sure, yeah, I referred to it a few minutes ago, but when we deployed that report, the Rising Storm, about this like crazy demographic shift that's occurring in the United States, we expected to get some attention about it, but to be honest, we didn't expect this much attention. And so we got a bunch of really, really terrific organizations reaching out and having, again, like real conversations. Some of, like, to be honest, some of them had read the report, some of them didn't. They saw the headline, they're like, this is probably interesting. And so we spent a bunch of time talking them through the data, but more importantly, talking them through a story, which is, wow, we're about to, right, we're about to be like this like crazy inversion of what you're used to. The other cool thing is that in our report, we show that Japan, as an economy, is actually already beginning to experience what we're going to experience in the United States 10 years from now. So talked with some of these like journalists about like, hey, like, let's talk about what's happening in Japan. Have you seen that? Have you talked to somebody there? Like, if you dig deeper, you're almost like a fortune teller, about what's going to happen. So again, it's like different angles for different periodicals, and it all goes back to what I learned is the number one first step in marketing, which is know your audience. And when you know your audience and you have an understanding about what they care about, then you can craft the message to deliver to them most salient.
Did you have a question on the side? Oh, okay.
Single minute.
Are there any questions from
Chat.
Zoom?
Okay, and then in terms of how to show success, so in terms of the metrics that you're trying to drive, I think is really important. So here are some here. It's a double-edged sword because it can be difficult for quantities to have hard metrics. But it's important because if you don't do that, then the executives won't see value, your clients might, and then you'll have trouble continuing the program. So in a way, this is very important to think this through. So one of my last questions to you, JP, is what are some of the key metrics that you would say are trying to drive, say at PayPal and Lightcast is doing this content marketing? And were you successful with it or not?
Yeah, so really interesting, like full funnel example when I was at PayPal. So PayPal is actually a more intricate revenue model than most people understand, because of course PayPal takes a little bit of a vig for everything that you transact, you as a human, with another entity. But in fact, the true revenue model is a business to business model. It's like as Best Buy transacts using the PayPal thing that you just swiped, there's like an intricate network behind it that depending on whether you're a credit card person or a PayPal person or a Venmo person, there's a bunch of micro dollars being exchanged, right? Like, and so we thought that's fine. That's where we get our general money. But the fact is that during the holidays, we know a lot of people shop. And so we wanted to build a campaign that inspired people to use PayPal when they shopped. And we did that through generating some content marketing and some thought leadership. But most importantly, it was about getting down to these business metrics that you see here, which is how can you inspire the action that then generates revenue, right? Like, and for that campaign, it was easy enough, right? Like that was a business to consumer campaign where we just wanted you to use it more often. And so the key metric there was just how many times did people use it, right? Like, and that's like sort of like the most simplistic like measurement that you can do. And that use it metric can come in the form of how many people hit our website or how many people like actually bought our goods. It's a lot more complicated than business to business, right? Like there are so many intricate metrics that you go through because oftentimes the business to business end purchase is very complex. It's a mix of services and software and hardware. And it's too complex for us to cover in 2 to 3 minutes. But from a business to consumer perspective, oftentimes that metric that you're looking at on the business side, on the end, is just how many times did they use the thing? And so you can start with thought leadership, but at the end, you just have to inspire that action. And the action is using the thing, buying the thing, doing the thing. And if you don't stitch the funnel all the way down, as Peter and Paul noted earlier, you sort of get stuck at the top. And no executive wants you to get stuck at the top.
When I was in advertising, we used to refer to a metric called talk value, which was hard to measure then, easier now with PR tools that like look for, pickup. But we used to say all the time, like if something we put out there, content, gets picked up on a late night talk show, make fun of, it becomes a catchphrase, there had to be value with that, right? Because it was the spreading. We're trying to measure the spread of ideas, essentially.
I mean, even right now, like less marketing speak and more just business speak, there's a line item on the balance sheet called goodwill. And it's just an estimate of how impactful your brand and your company is to the world, such that people just assign a bit more value to what you say than someone else because they value your brand.
Right, yeah, and the Google SEM version of that is called domain authority.
Yes.
Right, how much clout does your web presence have? Your Times, what? Yeah, our site.
Right, exactly, yeah. And then just one other thing to add to all that. So with the business, another piece, which would be like a whole other hour, whole other talk, but just to put it out there, is, around leads, and what is a lead, what is a qualified lead, and how creating the whole ecosystem for them. When you capture leads, and they might be existing clients, by the way, maybe someone new there. How do you qualify it? How do sales teams to do it? How do you have software to kind of track all that? How do they kind of go down a certain funnel? So sometimes with content marketing B2B, it's also looking at the qualified leads and any like kind of business outcomes.
2 minutes. Yeah, so we should probably really want to open it up
Yeah.
to the class here, hear your thoughts, questions. Any of you worked in a company that does some sort of like thought content marketing? No, me too. Everybody here does.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a question more around, because it's something we're grappling with ourselves and need kind of, sometimes when we're trying to put thought leadership out there to promote, say, one of our programs, right? And we're noticing that, attention spans are down, especially, going straight to consumers.
Yeah.
We're noticing, especially younger generations, like podcasting right now is the number, the kind of the popular kid on the block, so to speak. And so I'm just very curious if how you're maneuvering that, because like the examples you showed, I don't know if that was by coincidence, it sounded like the original thought leadership piece is indeed like the thicker report, and then the derivatives become like the podcast or whatnot. Why not have like the podcast be do you know what I mean? Like think of different media to be the original.
Yeah.
I'm just very curious your take on that, given the changes we're seeing in how consumers
I have a
absorb
strong point of
content.
view on that, actually, right? Which is that attention spans are shorter, but people consume lengthy things that are good.
Yes.
And people will sit through 4-hour movies.
Yeah.
They
And
will
binge watch a show.
binge watch, 7 hours of a show.
Or 3 hours
Or
podcast.
podcasts, yeah. So I think this has always become, it's a matter of quality. And are we saying things that are remarkable in the original sense of the word, like worth making your remark over? And the sad truth of content and anything that humans endeavor to do is most of it sits in the middle. And we produce mediocrity forever. We produce mediocre content, mediocre advertising, mediocre, you name it, right? And all attempts to try to deconstruct what makes something remarkable have failed, because it is often a bit of inspiration. Otherwise, every song would be a hit song. Every show would be a hit show.
It's like 90% art, 10% science, whereas some people want to try to engineer it and think that it's the reverse. My answer to, even though some of those other media are definitely trending, they're just really more difficult to do in an excellent way. Like you can get many people collaborating in a written form, It's a lot more difficult to get. It's like sometimes some of your smartest, most interesting people, they don't have a camera. Right?
Yeah,
And so it's like, oof, like I would love for something like to happen that is more multimedia. But sometimes you just have to work with what you got. And the easiest thing is always to start with the written word and then you develop from there. But even like for me, I know that this is not you know, a discussion about creative per se, but to me, the most intriguing part. Well, actually, let me not state it, I'm just gonna ask it. Like the Dove short film that we showed, like what was it that stood out to you? Like when did you really start paying attention to what was happening? Like was it from the jump? Was it like a few minutes in? Like what happened? Like when you were like, oh wow, this is something that I really care about.
I think it like made me, you know what I mean? And it, as soon as it tugged on my heartstrings, that's when I was paying attention to the story. So I wanted to tell that story and build.
Yeah. Anybody else?
The storytelling. It started out with the girl who's standing up there for about 10 seconds, like, what is this about? And then it cuts into the cuts, the jumps and the needles. It makes me feel peaceful. And then at the very end, it says, talk to your daughter before the industry does, and that's a really strong tagline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's why.
Yeah. And further evidence against the people not paying attention to things, like the other one, the one that we didn't show, was Will Crying. It's much longer, it's done in documentary style, have you seen it? It's like devastating.
yeah, I was literally, I literally started.
It's heartbreaking to watch, but it was watched by millions and millions and millions of people who were so affected by it, shared it with their friends. So you can break through. And just one word on podcasts, we think like, oh, people are listening to podcasts. It's like all media. There's well over 1 billion podcast titles in the catalog. And almost all of them have no download, 2 listens, right? It's a long tail where there's 10 to 15 podcasts that get over 5 million downloads an episode. So
One thing that I wanted to get your comment about.
Oh, it caught my attention with the images changed, were flipping and the body was changing. You saw her body changing and changing.
Yeah, when she was on the scale, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So for me, two interesting things. Thing number one is that I'm a DJ. I've been a DJ for 30 years. To me, what was the most interesting part was the music. Because along with you're staring at the woman, you like the lyrics were saying like it's coming, something like what's coming, what's happening, right? And then when like you know like the instrumentation kicked in was when they started to do that phase. So for me, it was that. But as I watched it like 3 or 4 times before we presented today, I thought if this happened in your Instagram feed, which is generally sound off, would I have stopped? I don't know that I would. It was the music and her face combined that was intriguing. So to me, like, it's just sort of emblematic of how difficult it is to construct something that's really, really impactful. And like, if they had done just the woman and no music, or just the music, but they had started the things really fast, would it have been as cut through as it is? Maybe not. Like, those are decisions that need to get made by like high level creatives. And what if they didn't have a videographer? What if they couldn't afford to license the track that really was emotive for you? It could have fallen flat. And so that's why I think many people they still sort of rest on the things that are the easiest to do, and then you maneuver from there.
yeah, I mean, its success most likely came from people sharing it with each other, right?
Yes.
You've got to see this. Yeah, that's what we do.
Like companies deciding on certain things that happen in the world, like I kind of feel like in today's world, either you're right or you're wrong. Like if a company chooses like to support a war or something like that, or against it, and everybody on social media is like cancel them, like they're done. Like how are you guys kind of deciding like should we say something, should we not? Because it seems like it's almost like at this point you shouldn't say anything, but people are still expecting you to say something to them.
Yeah, I mean, that comes down to the company's culture and their DNA. We could never, the companies I work for never say it's controversial. But if you are, Ben and Jerry's,
Right,
right?
My old company.
yeah,
Patagonia,
I used to be in Pender's.
oh, yeah, oh, really, okay, yeah, I mean, so they were founded on principles.
that's right.
Patagonia
Mhm.
is founded on principles, they stand for some things. I think P&G has moved very boldly in that territory. And then you see something like Bud Light, which made a misstep, and lost billions in market value.
Starbucks.
Starbucks, yeah, I think Starbucks also is taken. We actually watched something today that in our class at Starbucks did.
I think it is interesting though about starting that, right? It's like, it's one, like a lot of the brands that we reference are legacy brands. And so you know that like Ben and Jerry's are like super liberal, like very like, pride flags on like on ice cream pints for years and years and years. So it's not a surprise to you, but I think that inflection point for a company or for a brand about like, I don't know, should we take a stand on this? Nobody knows us for this. Like we maybe it's not core to our business or to our DNA, but maybe we feel like we need to be forthright in this regard. It's a tricky situation these days. I mean, like, look, I work at a company like who has vast reams of data about how this country and other countries are doing, and things like, what would it be like if the immigrant population in the United States suddenly dramatically reduced, right? Like, so we then have to figure out, do we just want to talk about it objectively, or do we want to talk about it subjectively? And I think that is the key, like, differentiation point, right? Like, for right now, we're going to talk about it objectively. Look, the fact is that if anybody dramatically reduces the population, knowing that we're already starved for workers, we're going to be in trouble. That's very different from the incoming administration is blah, 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 blah. Like, no, that's not what we're doing. We're just going to treat it objectively for now. And I think depending on the situation, the company and the time frame, but it also goes back to having people ready as a company all the way from the top. Well, to stand up for whatever it is they've decided.
And your shareholders, right? So.
That's right.
Right, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the job of the company. We do something as executives that damage the company's reputation, you will be sued.
That's
by all the people who lost money, right? So it's serious. It's not
Some
easy to
data
do.
that we saw was, if, say, a CEO that leads based on their values or principles, it works for them as long as the company is doing well.
Yes.
But as soon as it goes sour, then
An inverse relationship.
it has an inverse relationship, positive and negative. So
And if we want to have a conversation about actually just that, there's a great company in New York, BBMG, that specializes in brands that have a certain purpose behind them. And they have a lot of data. Companies that have stood for things. And they would tell us, they would claim like, the future, the generation of consumers that are coming into the marketplace now care much more about how brands behave than their parents. And that this is going to become increasingly important. I would be interesting to know though, whether the data of the culture bears that out. Do people really, one more data point, I worked at West Elm, which
So got a discount? I need the couch.
yeah, which I didn't take advantage of while I was there. With my wife reminded me, every time we look at the expensive couch. But so all of our materials are fair trade sourced, and we use a lot of sort of indigenous manufacturing, and as a result, the products are more expensive. Time and time again, we saw it in focus groups. People said, yes, that's important to me, but I'm not going to pay more.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't know whether consumers are willing to put their
Right,
dollar.
exactly, right.
Yeah,
but if two are the same,
yes, then they'll pick the nicer version.
yes.
Yeah.
This does build some level of connection. Our CSV report, we did a research on this, kind of like how do values match customer, and then kind of, it showed that it's not something that they will pick over or pay more for, but if things are equal, they get more loyalty than the
Yeah.
ones that have the aligned values.
like, just getting back to like the content side, like, we're talking more like business strategy now, but like on the content side, what's really interesting about your question is that I wonder if we looked 15 years ago at, let's say, 1,000 companies' websites, how many of them would have a tab that says like about our policies or what we think about the world? I can almost guarantee you that it has increased, like over the last 15 years. I know that before I joined Lightcast, that was one of my criteria. As I was looking for a new job, I was like, I want to go to a company that is putting something net positive out in the world.
I'm so glad it's been such a great conversation that we've gotten over. There's students, I think, waiting to get into you.
Okay, yeah, we'll be selling the book for $20 here, you could do it on PayPal or Zelle, and the free one is who asked the first
No, I
question?
think, we got a lot of good questions.
Yeah,
but
whatever you
the first
say.
question,
Awesome.
Raphael's
Whatever you
question
say.
came from, over here. Our PR specialist who came. Thank you.
Thank you very much.